Hey everybody, it's Larry Martin, and this is my son Jesse. He's been working here with me for 8 years. I can't believe how time flies. But a lot of times when people inquire about buying a house, either from online or they call the office, and they want to just get started in the process. Jesse, a lot of times, will meet with the people, and I wanted to talk about the process a little bit. So let's talk about kind of the beginning step. What does that look like?
Yeah, so a big part is making sure financial wise that you're set up for success. The last thing that we want is for us to be looking at, $100,000 more than you could afford in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And then you have this feeling of like, oh, this is what I can get. And then everything else in your price range is kind of, not as appealing to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's good to get that right off the bat set up. So then, we're putting ourselves in a successful place.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about an example of that. Maybe 2 months ago, we were showing houses to somebody in Hudsonville, and they just loved the place for like $320,000. And then we had the payments run. We had the exact down payments run. And as it turned out, it was a couple $100 too much a month.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to make sure we do that in the right steps and go from there. But what's kind of the next step, would you say?
Yeah. So for that, getting a good lender, one that would, let's say we find that perfect house for you, that we can have the numbers ran on that property, like you said beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you're comfortable with that payment,
Yeah.
for that house. So we get you, in touch with a good lender.
Mm-hmm.
Then from there, we set up a search based off of those parameters and your kind of dream wants of that house, area-wise, bedrooms, bathrooms. And I like to ask people too what their favorite room in the house is,
Mm-hmm.
Is it the kitchen? Is it for like a lot of guys will say, oh, good backyard or a good sized garage, and that's something that I keep in mind when we set up those searches so I can be looking out for them.
Okay.
Yep.
One thing I think that we do a little differently than a lot of real estate people out there is we're not really concerned about selling a house right now.
No.
I've seen you showing houses to people before, and I really think that, you really care a lot about how happy they are in the long run.
Very true.
An example of that is going into the basement very carefully, kind of looking at the foundation, looking at the furnace, looking at the hot water heater. We're not, qualified inspectors. We certainly think you should get that done. But before you spend the money on an inspection, we want to be very careful on some of those things. So why do you care so much?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even an inspection, you're looking at around $500 for that inspection. And if there's things that we can see obvious, like concern with the house, it's good to just point it out because really that could be $500 that your people are saving because you're not putting them in a situation of the unknown, right? If you see something where there's a crack in the foundation that's as big as your forearm, that's a problem, right? And it's good to just point those things out. That's in your client's best interest, I think.
And as far as the areas that they're looking at, so I understand, when you first meet somebody, you usually meet them at the office.
Yep, right here.
Right? And then you go through kind of what are the things that you go through in that kind of meeting?
Yeah, so a lot of it is for the peace of mind, right? They know where we are at in the process when we're in it, right? Because a lot of times it can move very fast. And if it's the first time buying a house, it can be quite the task, and there's different terms that if they don't know what it is, it can make them really just worried about the process, that things are out of control or anything like that. What I like to do is I like to go through the whole process of the buying a home, the timeline of it, their next steps, right, of what we can do now before we even look at homes. And then I also go over the offer at least once with them while we're there in person to just give them the highlights of where you should be looking for in this offer for the most information, right? So you know that you're looking out for yourself too when you're signing those agreements. Because, it's 6 or 7 pages long, that offer.
32 points on an offer, and each one of them is a good paragraph.
Yes, yeah, and I don't expect people to understand the language of it, right? But what I can do is, and I do it too for the first time that we put in an offer, go through that agreement with them. But even before we do that, I like them to have seen that document before. Yep.
Yeah, because what happens, I think a lot of times is you're looking at houses at 4 or 5 o'clock at night.
Yep.
You decide you want it at 6 or 7 o'clock, and then all of a sudden you have to have your offer in sometimes quickly.
Yeah. Sometimes that night.
The way that you explain it ahead of time, sometimes weeks or days ahead of time, makes people feel really comfortable. So I like that, and they feel secure, and that's a big deal to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think, how many times in the last year have we been in a situation where we're about to show a house to someone?
Yeah.
And then we find out, hey, right after you look at the house, we need to know if you're writing an offer. And it has to be in like 2 hours after our first appointment with these people. That's, if you have someone that is really in love with that property, you want to make sure that you have someone that has done their homework beforehand. So then you're really setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. And a lot of times in that case, when there is another offer coming in, I call the other agent. Sometimes these are people that I've known for years, and they kind of give us this insider insight to help us win. So you never really want to be in second or third place. That doesn't help. We want to win. So over the last 2-3 weeks, you've had 4 or 5 amazing reviews, and everybody says, we can't believe how much Jesse cares about us. He's so careful. And, and above that, we got the house that we wanted. So, congratulations. And you had 8 years in the business. That's amazing. What's your big takeaway from this?
Yeah, so I feel like in the last couple of years, I've learned a lot from this team, right? And one of the big things I've learned is doing your homework beforehand, right? So when we put in an offer, we're not just basing it off of how we feel about the house and how much it could go up for, but we're also bringing statistics into it and saying like, okay, what in that neighborhood is the trend of above asking offers, right? Is it something where we're seeing like 3% on average for list price to sold price? Or are we seeing it a little bit higher with those nicer properties in that neighborhood? That's something that we can take into mind when we put in the offers. So then we're giving our people kind of the market, what the market's saying, and not just what we're saying.
So you're truly educating them. And the last thing we want to do is sell you a house this year and have you come back to us in 2 years, and then you can't sell it because you paid way too much. So we're very careful with that. If you know of anybody that's thinking about buying a house and certainly a first-time buyer, we'd love to have you come in, educate you on exactly what needs to happen, and then we'll take really good care of you. So thanks for coming in, man.
No worries.
Have a good day.